Chapter 5. Tahra watched the sunset and the sky turn crimson gold, to gray, to black. She lied there gazing up at the stars until she saw a shooting star. I wish that I could go home, she stated her wish on the small magical star, hoping it would grant her wish. She went in her shelter and let her eyes slip shut on her woven island bed. Tahra, called Mrs. Melody in the dream. Mrs. Melody tossed her silky black hair over her shoulders and let it fall down 5 inches past her shoulders. Today we are starting our May Day project. I told the class earlier when you dropped the papers off in the office. I want you to choose your group first, since you volunteered to lend me a hand. You can choose 1 or 2 partners to be in your group, Mrs. Melody explained to Tahra. Okay then, I pick Charmaine and Liliana, Tahra claimed as she turned to see her 2 best friends sitting in their seats. Any chance Tahra would get to choose her group for a project, of course she would choose her best friends. She loved working with them, and they made a great team. Tahra saw the sun shining in through the school window, shimmering off of Liliana's crystal blue eyes and reflecting off of her dark red hair, which flowed down to her mid-back. Liliana smiled at Tahra, and she returned the smile. Tahra let her eyes wander over to Charmaine and saw her adjust her light brown shoulder-length hair. Charmaine's hair was lighter than Tahra's, but only by a little. Tahra's group, you will have to make a poster on all things about May. I'll let that up to you 3 to determine what that entails, and learn about the maypole dance. Today is Thursday, April 27th, so you will have today, tomorrow, and the weekend to work on it. The early morning sun streamed in the shelter. Tahra rubbed her eyes as she awoke from her wonderful dream. She knew that was her group's task, since on Friday they were assigned. As she sat up, she pulled the rock out of her pocket. The rock was dull, so Tahra got another rock and began chipping away at it to make it sharp like the one of Robin Hood's arrows. At school, first thing in the morning, Mrs. Melody walked up to Charmaine and Liliana. I don't know what happened to Tahra, but we need 3 people to do the maypole dance, Mrs. Melody told Charmaine and Liliana without hinting at the knowledge Queen Stella had shared with her. You need a 3rd person, but it would not be fair to have another student do more work. I could do it, but every time I try to dance, I fall or get tangled in the ribbon one way or another. She had to restrain a chuckle as she recalled her past experiences. She was hosting the first May Day celebration in her hometown and wanted it to be perfect. With a group, she performed the maypole dance, but somehow managed to get chained to the pole with the ribbons. The others shook their head and undid the beautiful braiding to free her. Confident the second try would go better, she took her golden ribbon from a nearby person. She started off better at least, but then tripped over the one ribbon and crashed down to the ground. Her friend ran over to help her, which it turned out she twisted her ankle, so she had to limp the rest of the day. The only time she actually managed to dance well was when her husband was leading the dance and holding her in his arms. Maybe Tahra's younger sister, Kate, could take her place. That way no student in our class would be doing more work than any other, suggested Liliana, dissipating Mrs. Melody's memories. All right, as long as that's all right with Kate and Miss Sarah. If Tahra is back on Monday, we won't need to... Kate, and fingers crossed that is the case. Mrs. Melody turned and walked out of the room. She headed to the part of the school which was separated by a staircase followed by a long, empty hallway. This section of the school was their elementary. Mrs. Melody made her way to Miss Sarah's classroom and gently knocked on the door. Knock, knock. Miss Sarah walked over to the door. Mrs. Melody, what brings you down here? Sought Miss Sarah curiously. I would like to talk to you and Kate for a moment, she explained. Kate, can you come here, please? Called the kindergarten teacher. I have one question before I say what I came to say. Miss Sarah, what on earth did you do to your arm? Mrs. Melody asked her close friend. Well, I fell and broke it, Miss Sarah replied. Mrs. Melody continued on ignoring Miss Sarah's response, knowing it would be better not to ask. For Tahra being missing and May Day being on Monday, we need a 3rd person for the maypole dance. I think Kate would do great in that part, and Liliana suggested it. Would you want to do that, Kate? Sure, but it'd have to be okay with... Yes, Kate, it's fine with me. Mrs. Melody, you may borrow her as much as you need. I can fill her in on work she misses at a later time. Miss Sarah cut in. Then it registered, and she questioned, Isn't the maypole dance done by an even number? Typically, but we are doing a different version of it. Anyway, thank you. I'll bring Kate back in about 10 minutes. Miss Sarah responded by a smile. Then she turned around and went back in the room. Meanwhile, at the sea of paper, Tahra had gotten her rock sharp again. She used the rock to cut a vine, and she tied the vine into her hair. She grabbed her 2 baskets and headed off to fetch more fruit. Now she did not feel like Robin Hood, but Red Riding Hood, carrying her baskets. Either way, she was a member of the Hood family. She was no Robin Hood, nor was she Red Riding Hood. Instead, she decided to pretend she was Rose Hood. Rose Hood was a character she had just created in her mind. Robin Hood's and Red Riding Hood's daughter, she decided. She felt better being a made-up character instead of trying to be someone she definitely was not. Off she went skipping down the paths in the jungle. Back in Mrs. Melody's classroom, Kate was doing very well with learning the dance. "Kate, you caught on to the dance very quickly," commented Charmaine, seeing the quick improvement of not knowing the dance to nailing it in a short time. "Thanks, I always was a fast learner," Kate replied. She always learned so quickly because, much like Tahra, Kate loved learning. Of course not nearly as much as Tahra, though. With her sister teaching her all the time, she learned so much quickly. Kate thought maybe Tahra would become a teacher when she's older, as well as she is teaching her. However, Tahra always claimed she didn't want to be a teacher, but rather a singer. Kate had suggested be both, but she would hear nothing of it. "Well, if she learned that fast, she should go back to her classroom," declared Mrs. Melody, coming over. The girls nodded and Kate began on her way. Kate climbed down the million stairs going down the spiral staircase. There weren't a million stairs, but it sure felt like it. Kate wondered why there were so many without a floor in between. She wondered if there was something in that space, like storage, or some secret magical tunnel. Kate was almost all the way down and promised herself she would later come up with a fun, made-up explanation. She then walked the endless hallway. At long last, she reached Miss Sarah's classroom. She opened the door and walked in. "Kate, we started a worksheet. Here you go," informed Miss Sarah, handing a worksheet to Kate as she entered the classroom. "Thanks, Miss Sarah," replied Kate. Meanwhile, at the sea of paper, the midday sun was beating down on Tahra. She neared the edge of the stream. Tahra got too excited to get in that she wasn't watching where she stepped, and she slipped on a rock. She spun out of control and plummeted directly into the stream. She came up above the water laughing. She could hardly believe what had happened. At least no one had been there to witness her clumsiness. Then she began to swim around, enjoying the cool water. After a little while, Tahra got out of the refreshing stream. She was much cooler now, and it felt good to be wet, so she did not want to wring out her clothing as she had done previously. Instead, she decided to let them air dry slowly. She was glad she let her sweatshirt back at the shelter, or else it would have been hot to carry. Then she walked on to the blueberries. Back at the school, the class was finishing up their math lesson. "Okay, class, it's time for recess," announced Miss Sarah. "Kate, if Mrs. Melody needs you, and if you desire, you may go up." "That's all right. I already learned the dance." Miss Sarah looked at her with surprise, but nodded. Outside, Kate walked up to Miss Sarah. "Today, when you come over to help look, we will probably walk," Kate stated, still worrying something would happen to Miss Sarah. "Why?" questioned Miss Sarah, not seeing Kate's point. "Well, it is very difficult to ride a horse with one arm." "True, but I can manage. Besides, we need to be able to search as quickly as we can." "All right, if you say so, but we'll go together," Kate insisted. "I'll be more careful, I promise." Kate looked at her a little worried. She soon softened her gaze and smiled. "You may go on your own. I know you will be more careful." "Thank you." Kate nodded in reply and then ran off to go play. At the sea of paper on the blueberry path, Tahra reached out and carefully picked the biggest, bluest blueberries there were. Once her basket was filled, she headed back to the shelter. Rosehood was having fun as she walked the paths, and as she walked, Tahra was creating a long, fun story of how Robin and Red met, and she told the story out loud as she walked, with the wind being her only audience. Her story went as follows. Once upon a time, a long time ago, there lived a thief who was known as Robin Hood. He lived by a code and would much rather die than break his code. Robin was an honorable thief. He always stole from the rich only to give to the poor. He saw it as helping and not as stealing. One day he was journeying through the forest and came across a tavern. There he met the lovely Marian. She forgot all about her past and vowed to run away with her new love, Robin Hood. And so she did. Only a few months passed before the two were married. One fateful day, Marian ate something poisonous, which it cursed her, and what she needed. Robin only knew of one place it could be found. Robin knew he needed magic to save his beloved Marian. The magic pearl he desired was kept by the terrible sorceress Mally. She was the most powerful creature ever known, and no one would ever dare nor think to go near her dark palace. However, Robin Hood was different. He didn't care what that horrid beast would do to him, as long as he could save Marian. Robin traveled across the land quickly, until he came to the forbidden forest, which guarded Mally's castle. Robin Hood stood at the entrance, and remembered how brave the young prince had been to save his beloved Sleeping Beauty, and knew he would have to do the same in order to save his Marian. Robin Hood arrived at Mally's dark palace in one piece. Now all he had to do was find a way in and get the magic pearl. He spotted an open window not too difficult to get to. Robin climbed up a thick vine leading up to the window. He gripped the window ledge and hoisted himself up. His hands were trembling and sweaty with nervousness. He made it this far, just a little bit more now. As quietly as he could, Robin crept down the stairs. He came to Mally's throne room, which fortunately she wasn't there. Robin glanced around the empty room, looking for the place the magic pearl could be. Then he spotted the empty case aside of the throne chair. "Looking for this?" Mally cut in, startling Robin. He jumped and spun around. Robin saw Mally holding the magic pearl in one hand and her magic staff in the other. However, she also had Marian. "That's right, Robin. I knew the whole time you were here, and now look, I have both the pearl and the girl." Robin was astonished. He no longer could think clearly. He knew all that mattered now was to save Marian from Mally. "Please, your majesty, Mally, I promise I will leave you alone forever, if you will please return my dearest Marian safe to me," Robin Hood begged with tears coming to his eyes. Tahra paused speaking those words made her miss home. Tahra wiped away the tears and forced herself to continue the story and not think about missing her dear home and family. Mally smiled wickedly. There was no reason she should be nice now, when her whole life she only knew darkness, except for when she was trapped in her broken past. She used to be the kindest heart around until she lost everything, and then she went to the dark side and never thought about going back. She was way too far gone to possibly go back without so much of struggle and attempts to go dark again. "I'm sorry, Robin, but a long time ago I lost everything I once held dear. Since then, I hardened my shell and stopped being nice. Turns out the dark side wasn't so bad as my innocent self feared. In fact, it is way better. No more pain, no more suffering for me. Only for others. The past is in the long ago past. Do I want to go back? No, not at all. Life has been much better on the dark side. You, though, Robin, have been very lucky all your life, even though you are nothing more than an outlaw thief. You would never dream of joining the dark side, always stealing only to help the poor. But you also never felt what it is like to lose anything. I'm tired of you always getting your happy ending. But you no longer shall," Mally declared. She stamped her staff on the ground, and a purple aurora came from it. Then Marian fell to the ground, and Mally vanished in thin air with a wicked laugh echoing throughout the castle. Robin ran across the room and slowly sank down to his beloved Marian. He did not want to leave her side and spent countless hours by her side. Tahra paused again to come up with the next part of the story. This part was probably going to be the hardest part to come up with, but she knew she'd figure it out. She reached in her basket and ate a handful of blueberries. That was it. She knew the next part of her story, which was how Red and Robin Hood would meet. At once, she continued her story, still speaking it out loud. It was one fine spring morning, and Red Riding Hood was a little ways from her cottage picking berries. Her granny loved baking pies, and had run low on berries. She thought she heard rustling in the bushes, and it was confirmed when an arrow flew past her head and struck a nearby tree. "Hey!" Red called out angrily. "My apologies, milady. I thought you were some kind of wild beast. At least I missed, but I am truly sorry," claimed Robin, stepping out of the woods. "I'm Robin Hood. Red Riding Hood, although it's not my actual name, but I became better known as Red. It was a childhood nickname, but has stayed despite years passing. I don't mind, though," she replied. "What is your real name?" asked Robin curiously. "Megan," Tahra said, quickly thinking for her story. "Well, it's nice to meet you again. I'm so sorry I'm mistaking you as some wild beast." "It's all right. It's not like you hit me with it. I'll see you around. Do you live in the village?" "I travel through the forest." "I take it you do, though." Megan nodded, and Robin disappeared into the forest. Megan then went back to picking berries. She was smiling and humming a tune. She hoped someday she would see him again. However, Red feared if he traveled all the time and didn't have a grounded home, their paths would never cross again. Only fate could tell. Robin Hood wandered through the woods much slower than normal. He couldn't stop thinking about the beautiful maiden he had met. Somehow he felt drawn to her and didn't know why. Everything changed in that moment. He no longer wanted to be a thief or a bandit. He didn't even want to constantly be traveling. All he wanted now was to be with Red. Robin turned around and bolted through the forest and embraced Red. She was smiling ear to ear, and he knew then she wanted to be with him just as much as he wanted to be with her. "I'm so sorry. I knew I needed to stay with you forever. Sure, I love my Marion, but that's in the past now. From here on, I will never be a thief again," Robin vowed. Red smiled and responded, "I was hoping you would come back. You are the first one I could not get out of my head. A while ago, I had an amazing boyfriend, James, but he unfortunately was lost at sea. Perhaps it happened to him and Marion so we could be together." "That's proof everything does happen for a part of fate," Robin spoke warmly. Several months later, Robin and Red Riding Hood were married. It was the most magical day for both of them. Then 9 months later, they had a beautiful daughter whom they called Rose Hood. Tahra smiled as she finished the story, and just in time as she arrived back at the beach. It was an interesting story, one she never thought she would ever come up with. Tahra looked out beyond the sea and let the story replay in her mind. Maybe another day she would add to it and have adventures for Rose Hood to go on, but not at that moment. While this was happening, the school bell rang, representing the dismissal of the school day. Kate let out a long, trembling sigh. She then grabbed her backpack and headed for the door. Just as she reached the door, Miss Sarah called to her, "Kate, can you come here for a moment?" She walked over to Miss Sarah's desk without saying anything. "I can tell you are worried about me, but you don't need to be," Miss Sarah insisted. "I know, but," started Kate. "Please don't worry. You are more concerned about me than I am." "All right, I will do my best not to worry so much," replied Kate with determination. "Thanks. Now go before you miss your bus." Kate smiled quickly, turned away and towards the door. Kate sat quietly on the bus in deep thought. She was thinking about Tahra and where she could possibly be and why Miss Sarah wasn't worried she could get more hurt. Every time they went over a big rock, the bump interrupted Kate's thoughts, but she was soon able to drift directly back to them. The bus was rolling along when a loud pop was heard. The bus slowed down and soon came to a stop. The bus driver, Kelly, walked off the bus, and 2 minutes later she came back in. "Kate, I have bad news. We have a flat tire," Kelly explained. "That's okay, Kelly. I can walk," Kate replied with confidence. "Are you sure?" "Yeah, I don't mind. We are only a mile or less from my house." "All right. I'll see you tomorrow, then. Be careful walking." Kate walked quickly back to the Snow White house. Kate then remembered one of her favorite shows, Snow White. She recalled how brave Snow had been, and knew she needed that courage now to find her sister. She knew in any fairy tale there was always a happy ending, so maybe if she looked for Tahra with the strength of the fairy tale characters, hopefully she would be able to get her happy ending and bring Tahra home.